So today I want to go over a poison landslide build for the Druid in Season 1 of Diablo 4. And this is easily one of the strongest builds for Season 1, and there's a few really good things about this build. First off being you don't need to use any uniques. I'm not using any uniques, and I don't even think there's any uniques that would make this build stronger. Second being that it is using the new legendary aspect for the Druid. And third being that it's just a unique playstyle. It has a ton of ability resets, and in my opinion, it's just a really fun playstyle. And then next up we have our skill tree starting with Stormstrike. Now we don't use this to actually generate spirit, but we do use this a ton, so we want the damage reduction. Then we do want both upgrades because we're using this so much. Upgrade 1 is a chance to immobilize, upgrade 2 is a chance to call us vulnerable. Then 5 points into landslide, this is our main damage dealer of the build. Upgrade 1 immobilizes after hitting enemies a certain amount of times. Upgrade 2 causes when you immobilize or stun enemies, you gain a terror mote, and then when you hit an enemy with a landslide, it consumes a terror mote, making it a guaranteed crit and doing 40% increased critical strike damage. And then on bosses, you just have a 10% chance to gain a terror mote anytime you hit them. And we almost never actually cast landslide itself. We generate landslides through our other abilities, but we still need it on our bar for our upgrades to actually work. Then we're going down, we're putting 4 points into Earthen Bulwark so we get more shielding. I just use the excess points we have to put more into this because we get so many resets that we can constantly cast Earthen Bulwark. So more points into this gives us more barrier and just makes us more tanky. Upgrade 1 makes you unstoppable. Upgrade 2 causes Earthen Bulwark to explode at the end, dealing some damage, and this explosion can deal a massive amount of damage. And as we're getting a bunch of resets of Earthen Bulwark, when we have a Earthen Bulwark up and then we get a reset and cast another one, it blows up, proccing this damage. And I've seen millions of damage off of this upgrade because I'm pretty sure it still scales off of the level of the enemies. So the higher level the enemy, the more damage it's dealing. Then we're going down 1 point into Poison Creeper. Poison Creeper is primarily used to proc additional landslides. Upgrade 1 increases the duration of the immobilize. Upgrade 2 increases our critical strike chance against enemies that were hit by the Poison Creeper. Then we're going down 1 into Trample. This again is primarily to proc more landslides. This also does make us unstoppable. Then I put 1 point into the upgrade where Trample does more damage to less enemies it hits. This can actually deal some decent damage. Then we're going down 1 into Petrify, and this just stuns everything around us and makes them take massively increased critical strike damage, but against bosses it increases the duration and increases the critical strike damage they take. And this ultimate will have a pretty low cooldown overall, so we're able to cast it a lot, and when we cast this we'll basically always kill anything that got hit by the stun of it within that stun duration. And upgrade 1 increases its effects by 1 second. Then our capstone is Nature's Fury. When we cast an Earth skill, you have a 30% chance to trigger a free Storm skill, and when you cast a Storm skill, have a 30% chance to trigger a free Earth skill. Now this is very important for the build because this mixed with one of our legendary aspects is what gives us resets on our abilities constantly. Then we have our passives, 1 into Heart of the Wild to get 3 into Wild Impulse. Your core skills cost more but have increased damage, and we almost never actually cast Landslide, so this is just free damage increases. 3 into Predatory Instinct, increased critical strike chance to close enemies. 3 into Iron Fur, you gain damage reduction while in Werewolf or for 3 seconds after Werewolf, and that 3 seconds after Werewolf is very important because we only get Werewolf from our Trample, but because we get so many resets of this, we'll have this damage reduction up quite a lot. Then 1 into Ancestral Fortitude to get 3 into Vigilance, damage reduction after using a defensive, and since we'll get so many resets of Earthen Bulwark, this will be up quite a lot of the time. Then we're going down 3 into Crushing Earth. Earth skills deal increased damage to CC enemies. 3 into Stone Guard, while you have Fortify over 50% of your max life, your Earth skills deal more damage. This will be proc basically 100% of the time. And then 1 into Safeguard, critical strikes with Earth skills fortify you for 2% of your base life. This is massive and you only need 1 point into this because we crit so much and hit so many enemies, especially with the new increased density, that you'll basically be fortified 100% of your life 100% of the time. Then 1 into Neurotoxin, so we can get 3 into Envenom. You and your companions deal increased critical strike damage to poison enemies. We'll be poison creepering all the time, so all enemies will basically be poisoned. We also have 3 of this on our necklace for 60% increased critical strike damage. Then 3 into Defiance, increased damage to elites, 3 into Natural Disaster, so our Earth skills deal increased damage to vulnerable enemies, and Storm skills deal increased damage to stunned, immobilized, or knocked back enemies. Then Resonance, Nature skills deal increased damage, triple this bonus if an Earth skill is the next cast after a Storm skill, and vice versa. So since this build primarily uses the Earth skills for our damage, but we're using Storm Strike as our basic, we'll be able to alternate them and make this passive give us triple the bonus. So this is a pretty massive damage increase. And then next up we have our Spirit Boons, Wariness to take reduced damage from elites. We don't have to take Advantageous Beast with this build because we have 2 forms of Unstoppable, so just more damage reduction, which a lot of other Druid builds don't get to use anymore. Then Side Talons, increased critical strike chance. Then Iron Feather for increased maximum life. This was actually buffed, so it gives you quite a lot of maximum life. Now you can take the point out of Sight Talons and put it in Avian Wraith, or you can take the points out of Iron Feather and put that in Avian Wraith if you want more damage as well. But I think the increased life, increased survivability is generally going to be better because this build's damage is so incredible anyway. Then we have Pack Leader, a lucky hit. Critical strikes have up to a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of your companion skills. So this is massive to be able to constantly reset Poison Creeper. Then Calm Before the Storm, another lucky hit. Nature skills have up to a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate skill by 2 seconds. And then next up we have our Paragon Boards. Now I'm primarily going to be going over my board selection and glyph selection. I'll have a link in the description to the build planner if you want to follow every single point. And the Paragon Boards for this build is a work in progress. There's actually a lot of different things you can do with this specific build because almost none of the legendary nodes actually work with this build. So that just gives you a lot more possibilities with what boards you're going with. So starting off, we're using the Exploit glyph. We primarily want the secondary effect when an enemy is damaged by you, they become vulnerable for 3 seconds, 20-second cooldown per enemy. One of the main ways we're applying vulnerable massively increases our burst. And the first board we're taking is Heightened Malice. While 3 or more enemies are poisoned near you, you deal 45% increased multiplicative damage, one of the best legendary nodes in the game. Then we're taking the Earth and Sky glyph, and this will give us increased damage to poison enemies, damage reduction from poison enemies, which is very big. And a big reason you take glyphs like this is so you can put points into the dexterity or intelligence nodes to get the secondary effects of rare nodes throughout your Paragon boards, which will just give you some pretty big power increases. Then we're going over to the right, we're taking the Thunderstruck node. We're primarily taking this just to get another glyph, and I put Fang and Claw here, which I don't currently have max leveled, but this will give us increased storm skill damage. It'll give us damage reduction from vulnerable enemies, which when I level up this glyph more, it'll be a pretty big damage reduction from vulnerable enemies. Then the secondaries, while in werewolf or werebear form, close enemies take increased damage from you. We will be in werebear some of the time. And then we're going back up, we're taking the Inner Beast board, and the glyph we're taking here is Undaunted. Increased damage while fortified, damage reduction while fortified, will be fortified all the time. So this is just a massive damage increase and a massive damage reduction. Then we're going over to the left, we're taking the Earthern Devastation board. Your skills deal 30% increased damage to crowd controlled or vulnerable enemies. And the glyph we're taking is Werebear. Now this is one I'm thinking of changing out because we're only in Werebear after we trample, so it may be better to get something else here. But this just gives us increased damage while in Werebear and damage reduction while in Werebear. Then we're going over to the left again, taking the Ancestral Guidance board, primarily to take another glyph. We're taking the Territorial glyph, which gives us increased damage to close enemies and damage reduction against close enemies, and we're always going to be close to enemies, so this is just pretty big damage increase and damage reduction. And like I said, this is a work in progress, but this board has been working out pretty well so far. And then next up we have our legendary aspects, the most important one being when Nature's Fury key passive, which is our capstone, triggers a free skill, your non-ultimate cooldown of the opposite type are reduced by up to 8 seconds. So we want this on our necklace to reduce our cooldowns even more. And how this works is when we cast a storm skill, it has a chance to give us a free earth skill. When we cast an earth skill, it has a chance to give us a free storm skill. Whenever that procs, all of the opposite skills are reset. So basically how this works is we just spam storm strikes and it will reset our earthen bulwark and our trample. Then off of any of our lucky hits, we'll also get resets on poison creeper. So basically everything is just getting massive cooldown resets. And then for all of our other offensive aspects, they can either go on your gloves, your weapons, or your rings. Doesn't matter where you put them. Well, we have poison creepers active, also cast a landslide in a circle around you, and your earth skills deal up to 20% increased damage to poison enemies. So anytime we cast poison creeper, we'll cast a landslide in a circle around us. Then we have our Trample now summons 6 landslide pillars, each dealing up to 80% normal damage, and now Trample is nature magic and an earth skill, which will just give it more scaling. And what goes along with all these landslide aspects is landslide's earth pillars now strike a second time and deal up to 12% increased damage. So anytime a landslide is generated from anything, it will now cast it twice. So when we cast Poison Creeper, it does a ring of landslides around us, then does a second ring. When we trample, it does a big wave of landslides across the entire screen, then it'll do a second wave, and all those landslides will deal increased damage. Then we have your core skills, deal up to 40% increased damage based on your fortify. This is multiplicative, it'll be procced 100% of the time, massively increasing our landslide damage. Then we have casting a storm skill, grant your earth skills 45% increased critical strike damage for 4 seconds, more multiplicative, and casting an earth skill increases the critical strike chance of your storm skills by up to 12% for 4 seconds. We primarily want this for the increased critical strike damage to earth skills because we'll be casting storm strike so much, this will be procced basically 100% of the time for some massive increased critical strike damage. Then on our helm, increase the duration of Earthen Bulwark by 6 seconds, and when you kill anything when your Earthen Bulwark is active, you replenish some of its barrier. This is super good because we can have Earthen Bulwark up so much because of all the resets. This will increase the duration by a lot. Then on our chest piece, basic skills grant 20% damage reduction for up to 6 seconds. We're casting Storm Strike all the time, so this will just be massive damage reduction at most times. Then on our legs, we want Disobedience for percent armor stacking. Then on our boots, we want when you have Fortify, your earth skills gain +2 ranks. And we'll always have Fortified, so all of our earth skills will just have increased ranks. Then next up we have our gems, our gear stats, and our hearts. On your weapons you want critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. On your gear you want damage reduction while fortified. And then for our hearts, we are still using the Barber. It's incredibly good with this build, especially with the recent fixes where Lucky Hit and all other effects work correctly with the Barber. How the Barber works is when you crit an enemy, you start building up all subsequent damage on that enemy. After a duration, or if that enemy would die, all that damage then blows up in an AoE, and that damage is a guaranteed crit, and that damage is scaled depending on your roll on your heart. So mine's 14% per second. So this just causes all your single target damage to be built up on an enemy, blows up in an AoE, is a guaranteed crit, doing massively increased damage to both single target and in AoE situations. And then we're using the heart that suppresses 20% of the damage you take. When you use it defensive, it blows up all that damage. We don't really care about the damage explosion itself. We primarily just care about the damage reduction. Then our third heart, I currently still have the heart that when we use our ultimate, it pulls enemies to us. This isn't very good with Petrify because it only pulls enemies to us in the area when we use Petrify, but I don't have another good ring with a different heart slot. Another good one would be the heart that gives you increased barrier generation and then heals you every second you have barrier up. That'd probably be my selection over this heart. And then finally, we have our gear stats. Now on our helmet, cooldown reduction, max life, all stats or willpower, and then basic skill attack speed. I think this is pretty good to have on your helmet because the more you can spam Storm Strike, the more resets you're actually going to get. But you could change this out for basically any other role you want that'd be good with the build. Then on our chest piece, you just want all damage reduction, total armor, max life, damage reduction from close or distant, damage reduction from poisoned, or damage reduction from fortified. Then on your gloves, you want lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, ranks to landslide, and then I have critical strike damage with earth skills. You can also just get critical strike damage. Then on your legs, you again want all damage reduction. Damage reduction from distant, from close, from fortified, from poison, but one of the main rolls you want is damage reduction while injured. And this was a damage reduction roll that was not nerfed, so as you can see here, I have 42% damage reduction while injured just off of these legs, and that's 35% and below. So once you get low health, say if you're CC'd or you just got hit by a bunch of damage, you'll get some massive damage reduction. Then on your boots, you want movement speed, dodge chance against distant, then probably another dodge chance roll. That'd be better than spirit cost reduction, which we really don't use, and then another damage reduction while injured roll. So just from our boots and legs, we have over 80% damage reduction while injured, which is just massive. Then on our weapon, vulnerable damage, willpower, core skill damage. I have damage to slowed enemies. I would want to change that to critical strike damage. Then on offhand, you want cooldown reduction, lucky hit chance, damage reduction while fortified, and then instead of spirit cost reduction, you would want damage reduction from poisoned enemies. Then on our necklace, you want rank 2 envenom, damage reduction from poisoned, movement speed, and instead of spirit cost reduction, you would want another damage reduction like damage reduction while fortified. Then on your rings, you want lucky hit chance, critical strike chance, max life, and vulnerable damage or critical strike damage. Either one of those is going to be very good. And that's the entirety of this build, and I've been really enjoying this build's playstyle. It's just really fun getting all these resets, being able to spam spam out all these abilities, filling up the screen with landslides. It's incredibly strong and it's really fun to play. But that's all I want to go over, so thanks for watching.
Must wait a moment.